polio epidemic in the United States began in 1908 and continued through 1955. In 1908, the U.S. was struck with polio. Poliomyelitis is a virus that cripples the body and is contagious. No one knew what polio was, how it worked, or even where it was coming from. From that time, it seemed polio would never end. Experts think polio was around in Egyptian times due to an Egyptian carving that shows an Egyptian with a crippled leg. During times there was not a polio epidemic, life was much like today. Polio epidemics arrived in the spring and stopped in the fall. During an epidemic, all social gatherings were canceled. Schools were closed, beaches were closed, homes and even cities were quarantined. Poliomyelitis and the fear of polio brought isolation. Polio affected everyone, from the people that did have polio and the families, friends, and more. Everyone stayed at home. One summer, even newspapers weren't even being delivered for fear of spreading polio. The mayor of Minneapolis read the news over the radio.
Well, it's 9 to 5, and time for all you kids to gather around your radios and listen to the funnies. This morning we have an extra special guest in our studios, none other than the Honorable Hubert H. Humphrey, Mayor of Minneapolis. The mayor is doing his part in entertaining you boys and girls during this stay-at-home polio campaign. And now I see that Mayor Humphrey has turned to the first page of the funnies, and so we'll see how Blondie, Bugs Bunny, and Popeye and all the rest are doing. Mayor Humphrey and the funnies.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning, boys and girls. See what it was all about. We start right off with Blondie, and you know what? It looks like Blondie and Dagwood are going to go out on a fishing party. Toby, you got any fishing music over there?
Yeah, a little bit by the sea.
Yeah, that's good. That's fine. Oh, listen to that. Now just take a look at that. There's Dagwood.
March of Dimes is a charity that was started by Franklin D. Roosevelt, who is a victim of polio himself. March of Dimes is a charity in which many people donated to during the polio epidemic to fund research for the polio vaccine. March of Dimes funded care for the victims of polio and research for the cure and prevention of polio. Many celebrities donated time and effort to make the March of Dimes a success. The entire nation was involved in the March of Dimes with one goal.
Every time it rains, it rains.
The March of Dimes got its name from FDR. He felt that everyone could spare a dime. Many people donated more than 10 cents.
You'll find your fortune falling all over town.
In 1947, Dr. Salk started researching to find a vaccine for polio. 6 years later, he has created a vaccine using killed polio virus. Dr. Salk is confident in his work, yet aware of the enormous pressure for his vaccine to be effective and safe. Dr. Salk tests the vaccine on himself and his children first, and then in 1954 conducts a test on over 2 million children, the largest medical trial to date. On April 12, 1955, Dr. Salk announces the success of his vaccine in the trials, and the event is carried live on AM radio and television. In 1952, before the introduction of the Salk vaccine, the United States had nearly 58,000 cases of polio, and 3,145 Americans died from polio. Less than 1 year after Salk's vaccine was released, only 7,911 Americans contracted polio. In 1965, only 61 Americans contracted polio. The vaccine was an overwhelming success. The last case of polio in the United States was back in 1979. The polio vaccine we use today was developed by Dr. Albert Sabin. Dr. Sabin's vaccine replaced the Salk vaccine for most purposes because it is easier to administer and less expensive. The Sabin vaccine is more stable to store and is administered orally, with no shot needed. Sadly, polio has not been eradicated worldwide. Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Nigeria still have cases of polio. The number of cases is decreasing, but there is more work to be done. In 1988, when the Global Polio Eradication Initiative began, polio paralyzed more than 1,000 children worldwide every day. Since then, more than 2.5 billion children have been immunized against polio thanks to the cooperation of more than 200 countries and 20 million volunteers, backed by an international investment of more than $11 billion. Rotary International and the Gates Foundation have been fundamental to this effort. Polio was a tragedy for hundreds of thousands of Americans. Science and doctors heroically created a vaccine to triumph over this tragedy. Hopefully soon, polio will be completely eradicated throughout the globe. The patent for the polio vaccine is said to worth over $1 billion. When asked who owned the patent on his polio vaccine, Dr. Jonas Salk famously responded, "The people, I would say. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun?"
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You'll find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trade them for a package of sunshine and flowers. If you want the things you love, you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me.